welcome back to No Man's Land. I'm Anna.
And I'm Shelly.
And I'm Grace.
You guys might recognize Grace from Design Sponge.
She is one of the top design blogs in America.
And we are here at the Design Sponge headquarters in Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
So this is where we do everything for Design Sponge. It's sort of a daily blog dedicated to all things home design. We teach people how to build things with their own two hands and do everything from decorate their house to cooking a meal for the weekend. So today we're reupholstering your frankly rather nasty bench.
It's so gross.
Everyone's got a piece of furniture like this. Anyone with a pet has had this happen where the fabric gets ripped, the foam is damaged, and it really needs a top to bottom overhaul. So the tools you'll need today are foam, upholstery fabric, scissors, a staple gun, spray adhesive, some sort of fluorescent paint, a ruler, a measuring tape, and a cutting device, whether that's a box cutter or some sort of X-Acto knife. So now Shelly's taping off the legs for the ottoman. Tapes that are not meant to be used with paint might remove some of the paint or some of the finishing from the legs you're working with, so just make sure that you grab either painter's tape or what we're using is called frog tape. So now we're going to spray paint the bottom of the legs, and you want to just go ahead and do it inside of some sort of closed structure. If you have a box, if you have a backyard you can use, that's preferable because for some reason the neon spray paints seem to get on everything, so I try to keep them inside of a box.
So now that your hands are pink, what are we doing next?
We're going to separate the top from the bottom, so you're just going to grab a screwdriver and we're going to swing it around and take off these hinges. It'll be a lot easier to upholster the top and the bottom if they're not connected. Now we're going to do the fun part, which is completely ripping this thing apart.
Ripping it.
So this is where your X-Acto knives, your box cutters, your brute force in your hands gets involved.
Alright, so we're removing this top panel that's
Here,
staple gun down with pliers and hands.
Wear gloves for this part.
Grace Bonney, a badass.
Grace is ripping this with her bare hands right now. You could seriously cut someone with this thing.
So for the next step, you're going to have to figure out how big to cut the fabric and the foam. And the easiest way to do that is to assemble it sort of like a layered cake. So what I'm going to do, since your top layer is going to be the fabric, I'm going to put the fabric down on the surface, pattern side down. So basically the side that you're going to see when you're finished, you want that down on the table. Underneath that will be the foam. So let's put the foam layer on top of that. And then let's put the lid on top. So I'm going to trace around the lid with a pen. If you've got a Sharpie, that's the best, but I've got a pen, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to trace around the outside. And you're going to do the same thing with the lid, and you can freehand this. It's all right if it's not a perfect line because you're going to staple it onto the bottom anyway. So give yourself about 1 inch or 2 inches of extra fabric and just trace a line around the outside. And then once you've got your line, you can leave it down and cut, or you can remove the lid and cut. It's all right if you've got the loose edges because you're going to staple them. So when you're cutting your foam, the best tool to use is actually a serrated knife. If you've got like a serrated bread knife, that's the easiest thing to use to cut this. You can also use a box cutter or an X-Acto knife. I use an X-Acto because it's really precise, but if you do have a serrated knife, I would suggest to go with that first. So for the next step, we're going to attach the foam to the top of the lid. You want to flip the lid over so that the top that's going to be facing up is where you're spraying the adhesive and then placing the foam. I'm just going to shake up the spray adhesive and then spray it directly onto the top of the lid and onto the bottom of the foam. So to attach the fabric, we're going to flip it so that the foam is on the bottom side of the fabric. The one thing to pay attention to is if you're working with a fabric that has a pattern, make sure, this is a really simple dotted pattern, so it's not going to matter for us. But if you have something you want to place, hold the fabric and then flip the lid up so that you can see where it's spaced out on the front. So if you have something that you want to place in the center or that is just more pattern specific, you want to make sure it's where you want it and then just adjust it and put it back down. The next step is my favorite. It's the staple gun. It's loud, it's noisy, it feels powerful. It's my favorite tool to use in the office. So all we're going to do is we're going to pull the fabric up over the sides and start stapling it into place. And don't be afraid if you kind of mess up a spot, you can always use the edge of a screwdriver to pull up one of the staples and readjust. Now we're at the part that everybody hates, dealing with the corners. And I hate having to tell people this, but there is no big secret about how to do corners other than what you're just going to want to do is fold the fabric over, almost like you would like a hospital corner on a bed sheet, and staple it. You're gonna end up with a little line or a little bit of bunching at the end. It's totally fine. So for the sides, we removed the damaged foam and we decided we liked the way it looked without the foam. So we're just gonna staple it directly onto the wood. Now, if you can hold it in place, you can staple it like this, or you could flip it back onto the side, and you just wanna staple it really taut so you've got a nice clean finish on the outside of the box. So now we're all done. We've made the top, we redid the sides, we painted the feet hot pink, and that's the basic how-to for redoing your ottoman.
Make sure you guys check out designsponge.com and follow Grace on Twitter.
And then also subscribe to the Digs channel.
And follow us on Twitter.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks.